public work session of the Board of Education. This is Joseph Cilio, President of the Board of Education speaking. May I have a motion that the board, well, we're already done with that. May I have a motion to adjourn executive session and open the public work section?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Welcome to the September 12th, 2023 public work session. Thank you for attending in person or through Zoom. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, we'd like to have a moment of silence for all those lost on September 11th, and also a moment of silence in memory of Kathy Nisi, a teacher aide at Stewart School, who recently passed away on August 29th, 2023. Thank you. Do you notice if today's meeting has been served to all members of the Board of Education pursuant to the requirements of law? Tina, would you please take attendance? Present.
Present. Present. Present.
Present. Janet DiCaprio, Superintendent of Business and Finance. Present. Naheed Watkins, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Leadership Development.
Present.
Barbara. Instruction.
Present.
Yes, Gary.
At this time, we're going to have a presentation on the capital improvement plan. So
Yeah.
I'll hand the mic over to Dr. Zeno.
I'll start us off.
All right. So tonight's work session is on our capital improvement plan. And this was developed in collaboration with our architects who are here, Gary Sheedy and Kevin Walsh, along with feedback from our administrators and staff. So our goal this evening is to discuss some of the potential projects that we are recommending. And they fall into three categories, which is education, fitness, wellness, and athletics. And we will also summarize our work that we've already completed and outline cost and timing. And again, we're going to try to share with you that this will be all done without raising taxes. So tax neutral, these projects will fall under that. So I wanted to just remind everyone that facilities are a vital for our educational delivery and our student experiences. And our district, we have a total of 9 buildings. That includes an administration office and the bus garage. And, it requires ongoing maintenance, which we have been doing throughout the, every year when we go, especially when we do the budget, we always talk about these capital improvement projects. So that's been ongoing. And, we meet with our architects on a regular basis. And we also use our facility studies, which actually is something that guides our work. And next year, that'll be updated as well, the facility study. So today's, again, the discussion points that we have is the educational, fitness and wellness, and athletic. And we're going to delve deep into each one of those. Again, our past accomplishments and then project costs. What's significant about what we're proposing is that, again, it's tax neutral. This means that we'll be doing this without increasing community's taxes. And Mr. DiCaprio will talk about it in a little bit later when we delve deeper into the projects we're proposing. So I want to give just a brief overview of what we're proposing before I hand it over to Gary and Kevin. So for the educational piece, we're proposing for the high school a Bloomberg Terminal classroom, really introduces our students to real-time financial data. It enhances job readiness, data literacy, critical thinking, and many other learning opportunities for our kids. Updating 2 new physics classrooms, again, at the high school. relocation of an art room, so that'll be upgraded, and a new fitness center at the high school as well. And for the wellness priorities, it's the air conditioning installation. Remember in May, we had our voters approved for in our multipurpose rooms at the 3 primary schools, the AC. So that's in progress right now. And we're also proposing for our primary schools that all of the classrooms have air conditioning in those spaces. All of our cafeterias, that means our 2 elementary, middle, and high school cafeterias. Those are large spaces to have the air conditioning. In addition to that, the high school gymnasium. And, any of these new spaces that we're speaking of, any of the new spaces that we have worked on in the past, which we'll delve in a little bit deeper into, they have been with air conditioning. The other thing we're also proposing, and this really came from our staff, is at Stewart School to add additional parking spaces. That has been a challenge. And so that's also in this proposal that you'll hear shortly. And then for the athletics, it's the new fitness center that'll be right next to our high school with a concession stand and outdoor restrooms, and turf field at the high school, including baseball and softball infields. And this is what, we're going to go into this a little bit deeper, but that gives you a little bit of an overview of what we'll be discussing tonight. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. So move right on from here into the high school fitness edition, which incorporates a bit of each of the 3 areas. This just locates the project. There's a art room on the corner, sculpture garden near it. You can see right between the track and then to the other side, all the way over to the tennis courts. Some sketches here. So you can see to the left, first floor sketch. It's immediately adjacent to the existing art room on the corner of the building and would be an addition right alongside that art room. And then to the right would be a second floor, which would be the actual fitness room up above, getting a somewhat panoramic views of the fields. A little more scope here showing that whole portion of the building. The yellow area is actually the first floor of the addition, in where the existing art room would be a new classroom and a hallway connector to the fitness room. To the far left is the current fitness room, which would flip spaces. So the art room on the corner would be relocated to where the current fitness room is. And then also at the end of the hallway, I can kind of use this here, in this classroom here would be the Bloomberg classroom.
Yeah.
We're just going to turn the screen so people can see.
Oh, is that okay? Can everybody see?
Yeah, I just want to make sure you can.
Is it?
That's much better for the audience.
Okay, that one's coming back in 10 seconds.
That's it.
That's
That's
it.
it down.
That's about,
Tether.
yeah.
Sorry, put it forward. We should be engaged.
That's it. Yeah. I just want to make sure the audience can see.
That's-
Yeah.
No good deed goes unpunished, right?
Yeah. Let's let that one come back up.
Oh, yeah, it'll be posted.
Just for everybody, the presentation will be posted online as well. So if you're
Okay.
not in the room and you can't see it.
I was just gonna, I can keep going. I was just gonna wait for that to come back up.
Okay.
Okay. I'll keep going. Okay, all right. So on the screen now you have the first floor plan, which now really again in this area here with the cursor, this is the existing art room in the corner of the building. Track is over here. And this would all be new first floor space immediately adjacent to the existing building. We wanted to be sure not to create unsupervisable pockets either. So the building is right up against and is accessible from the interior of the building, except for exterior access to these larger restrooms that have three toilets and 3 sinks each, plus some individual use toilets also outside. This dotted line is the line of a second floor roof and terrace. So as folks are waiting at the concession or getting in to the building or using the restrooms, they'll be covered. So that's the first floor. There's an elevator here. So this is all ADA accessible. And also as you come from the existing building through the lobby, there will be a nice open stair. It's still considered a fire stair. We need it for egress, but it'll be a nice sense of entry coming up to the second floor to get to the fitness room. You wouldn't just be going through a solid block stairwell. So that's the first floor. Again, this is the access road that exists right now. So yes, there's a portion of the second floor that you drive under. We'll see that in a minute. There'll be some 3Ds a little bit later. The second floor to the left shows as you come up the main stair here or come up the elevator here, this is all fitness room with open windows, panoramic views. To the far right would be towards the grandstand and the track, and all the way to the far left, all the way over to the tennis courts, with its own restrooms, stair access, etc. An outdoor terrace space that's only accessible from the fitness room outside, and then just a roof, just saying that mechanical units, et cetera, would be on the roof. And this is really acting as an independent building, although attached, and you can get to it from the school. Placing it on the site, you can see here's the location of the addition. See the track, tennis, previous music, and the rest of the high school here. And you can start to see how this starts to develop. You can see that it really is right on the line of the existing building, a separate building, 2 stories, how it sits on the field. And then as you get a little closer on the ground and we approach it, looking from the track and eventually right to, and having your Trojans, et cetera. This is the outdoor covered area down here. We're showing railings. They're not going to be all glass. Don't worry. It's just a way to show those will be railings, but this will all be railing. It'll all be safety. It'll all be ADA accessible, partially covered. Another view looking out towards the track. And then from the tennis court side, looking at the various areas. And again, it is completely separated from the existing. There would be new windows installed in what is now the current art room facing out towards the fields, since we're building up right against the building. But there will be +1 classroom there in this place. Some other views of that. You can see here the stair connecting, fitness room up top, an extension of the fitness space outside. And then below would be covered areas for queuing, for accessing restrooms. And again, there would be barriers and railings between the plaza and the track. And again, one more view looking from the grandstand. So that is the fitness room. So I'll keep going. So now we have just a kind of a broad view of air conditioning options in New York State schools. Starting at the bottom left here, window units. It's possible, but we're going in kind of from increasing cost, system complexity, and long-term value from left to right. So you have your smallest unit up through split systems, then unit ventilators that have air conditioning capability, and finally larger systems that basically sit atop a roof and are ducted throughout buildings or have condensate lines, et cetera. So these are the 4 main ways to go about that. And if you guys want to expand, I'll keep going. Just to say these are approaches to air conditioning, depending on the type of space, how large it is, series of space, et cetera. So as we go through this matrix here, on the left, there's all in this kind of yellowish color, reviewed work scope, currently reviewed work. And on the right is what's been recommended by administration to the board. So you'll see the fitness center is at top and it is recommended. And going through, we have the Bloomberg room, we have various science rooms at the high school. And I'll just skip to, you want to do the recommended? Because we want me to go through that.
You can go through that.
You want me to go through it?
Yeah. you
All
can.
right, so the recommended scope would be the fitness center, which includes relocating the art room, and it includes outdoor restrooms and concession. I think I failed to mention those outdoor restrooms, the larger rooms, are also accessible in the fitness center from inside, but you can never walk from the outside through to get in. There's all layers of security and doors that lock. People would not be able to just walk in and walk around the building. A Bloomberg room at the high school with air conditioning. Any new space is always proposed with air conditioning moving forward. 2 physics classrooms at the high school to be redone. New turf field at the high school, including baseball infield and turf softball infield at the high school. And then larger spaces at the cafeteria at the high school, as well as the gym. the cafeteria at the middle school and air conditioning at the cafeterias at both Stewart and Stratford, as well as all classrooms K-1. And then 28 parking stalls at Stewart. So the recommended work scope totals 22.7 million, and it falls into athletics, educational, and wellness down below. So this is essentially about 40% athletics, 32% educational, and the remainder as well-being and infrastructure. So I think that's a pretty broad view. The context against this is the next page, which is important to understand the continuum of projects, right? So this is a listing of projects of work that's already been funded, completed, or in the process of being constructed. And it totals $33 million. So this is ongoing work, and the recommendations are to continue this work forward. So we have everything here from outdoor learning, library renovations throughout the district, innovation labs, lots of educational pieces, as well as restroom renovations, a lot of infrastructure well-being work, roofing, masonry, asbestos abatement, all things that really have to be done on an ongoing basis in the school district. Gym bleacher replacement at the high school, tennis courts, and on through down the bottom, even towards storage buildings and security upgrades throughout the district. So just an important reference to know what's been done, what's already been funded, and what's being recommended. So this just goes through, these are just the individual cost estimates, right? So this is the fitness center at 9.7 million, the Bloomberg room, just under 400,000 over, excuse me, the physics studios. And then just now some visuals, just some work that we've done showing how you can overlap different functions on a turf field and how that can work. And these are a couple examples of turf facilities that have been accomplished. And this is just another reference, another recent project. This is an addition that was done at Herrick's High School for a fitness room. It was new. The architecture of this is actually traveling around that building now. So every capital project forward, they're copying the materials and it's growing around the building. This is very thick metal, impact resistant, as well as brick and other materials, very durable. Give a little sense of identity. This actually had a closed opaque part towards the entry because students gave their input that they were concerned about security. Want to make sure that when they looked out that there weren't people looking back in. So this is the interior of that, which also has room for instruction and classroom space and a chance for graphics. It's always good. And also just in terms of science rooms, I know some people have talked about some local inspiration in Nassau County. So this was a way of looking at similar sized rooms in a high school setting that are, about 1,000, 1,100 square feet, kind of like what you have, and turning them from the teaching being on the short wall at the end and everybody trying to see and being broken up into a bunch of desks and a bunch of tables and combining the lecture and the lab in the center of the room and facing the long wall into the teaching wall and finding all kinds of storage opportunities throughout the room on surfaces that are available. So a matter of just rethinking open and closed in terms of marker boards and digital media, et cetera, kind of how that looked. They're not huge rooms, but they came out successfully. Bloomberg Classroom, some images again. Main components of this are the terminals themselves, the dowel up top there in the upper ceiling there, and then some teaching screens to the front. And I'm not sure. That'll be up to the district how many students would be in a section, but each student would have the two terminal section.
It is.
Yeah, that's
Don't give me a room. You know what I mean?
right.
No, I think the goal would be to
Yeah.
appropriately affix the room. I think there's no point in doing
Yeah.
all the work if you're not going to kind of
That's right.
set it up properly. And I know it's being we're talking about Bloomberg terminals, but it could be multi-uses. I'm sure Mr. Steingruber and others could come up with ways to use it for other business classes outside of just, Bloomberg terminals itself.
I guess I'm not getting cost. Is it including element, or it's just for?
This doesn't include the equipment with this.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Just some more images, another one after this. To the different ways that room can be in it, I think. Just to say, within the high school itself, to situate this at the end of the long hallway, open it up so students can see what's going on in there and be curious and interested in it, would be the goal. So that is the presentation for this evening.
Thank you, Kevin. And I did want Ms. DiCaprio to sort of go over the tax neutral piece of this.
Let Mrs. DiCaprio finish, and then you guys will have a chance to ask. No, it's okay. You can ask we can ask all the questions of anybody up here. We just wanted everybody to understand the financial implications before we go to questions, if that's all right.
So we've been talking for quite some time about the fact that we had some bonds fall off a few years back. And at that time, we had increased our transfer to capital by about 101.5 million. What this is looking at is taking a bond payment, so going out for a bond somewhere between 17 and 18 million. It would probably be in the low 17s to have a $1.5 million annual debt service payment. That plus we have about 5 million in reserves. So those two would be the sources to finance these projects. As the projects get flushed out, we'll refine this more and more. We're looking at, we have to look at some of the electrical capacities for some of the air conditioners. Even in the cafeterias, we were looking at some additional spaces. So these numbers are still preliminary, but these are the projects that we have been, in the realm of where it is. So the 22.7 million, we're thinking that about there will be what would be tax neutral. About 5 and change of that would come from a capital reserve, and the low 17.1 to 3 million would be from a bond. And what we would be planning to do is reduce our transfer to capital line to meet the debt service payment.
And just for everybody's refresh, the difference between the capital budget and the remainder of the budget, these can only be used for capital projects, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Just so everybody understands, it's different. There are different funds. I don't know if everybody's attended the budget meeting, but there are different uses. It'll fall within that budget. So also, can you just explain maybe just the bond process a little bit for folks, just to kind of give an idea of timeline at a high level?
Sure. I mean, we haven't laid out a schedule for this yet, but what we do is we go through the bonding process, which requires a public vote. All of the advertisements, the public hearing, the whole thing that you would do with any other vote, that's the bond process that we would be going through. We would work with our fiscal advisor, we would work with our bond attorneys, and we would go through that process. And we would get authorization for the borrowing. At that point, once we had the authorization for the borrowing and for the projects, our architects would start to design these projects, and the borrowings come as the projects get done. So it's not as if it usually comes in several different authorizations, not necessarily all in just one, but we would see how those projects go, and that's how it would happen.
And just for everybody's benefit, would you draw the bond all at once, or how does that work?
It depends on what the projects are. So it could be partial bonds, or it could be one big one. It depends. One of the projects here is quite large, so it might end up, because we're not going to do that many projects, it could end up in one authorization. If not, it might be two. It depends on how we phase it and how we stage it in.
And what's our bond rating for everybody, just as a refresh?
AAA.
AAA. So we have the best bond rating,
Yes.
which is
Yeah,
hopefully,
one of
hopefully that benefits us.
Yes.
Mr. Capia, could you also share when was the last time we went through this process?
2009 was the last bond issuance.
That was 35.4 million,
Mhm.
which BBS Architects and Engineers spearheaded this back in 09.
Yeah.
And just so I can jump in real quick.
The items on the white sheet that are 33 million we've done over the years, is that
Not all are complete. Some are budgeted, some are in
In the works.
process. Yes, but this is everything that we have funded.
since what date? 09? Back
No,
when
no.
we started? No,
I think we went back to
it's 5, 6?
I think we went back to either 2017 or 18.
Okay. Sorry, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Is any,
Mr. Cappi, you mentioned bond vote. When would that happen if,
I don't have a calendar yet.
Okay.
But, we,
That would be something that we discuss.
and just if it is approved at whatever the timeline is for a vote, then there is how long a lag from the time of approval to getting kind of BBS working and state approvals and all that can give people a little bit of a dummy timeline, for lack of a better term.
I mean, it would follow the same, a similar process of the other capital projects. So I mean, probably a year to 18 months. Yeah.
From the time of budget approval.
From the time of approval through to work being done, yes. Much of some of the work would only be done in the summers to get started with. The work outside of it could go a little bit, may be able to be started, but probably not.
Yeah, just to say, but the day you have a vote would be the day we would start to do real design work towards construction documents. And depending on the projects and when the vote falls. So typically people would have the expectation, well, what can we do first? Is there an urgent project that has to happen? Let's get that out front, get it going. It can take us 6 months plus to design, then we submit, and it can take anywhere from 8 weeks to 6 months, depending on what's going on up in the state. That's just the honest truth, for approvals. And then you go out to bid, then you award. Yeah, the expedited approval is no longer. So,
So our approval is just the first step. The state also has to approve it for everybody's understanding.
yeah, so I mean,
The design process,
Yeah.
so it's delayed.
If you can just kind of take us through, like I'm thinking of what was approved in May, right? We had a lot of capital projects that was approved in May with the budget, and we start that process. So I think about those that we're starting. I'm thinking about like our multipurpose rooms, like the engineers are in, and the bleachers, like the time frame for that. I think that's important because it always, for us, we vote, and it's not till not that summer, it's the following summer that we do the work, because the approval process takes so long.
Yes, sometimes it's approvals, sometimes it's also time frame on materials that will delay projects even further. But for this past May's vote, we're currently in the design phase, looking to submit those projects over the next month or so to the state. Then we wait on the state, which could take, Kevin mentioned, anywhere from maybe 3 months to 6 months, put those projects out to bid and start those works for next summer. Now that sometimes at work, you get materials delivered in time and you come in over the summer, able to get your work done over the summer. Sometimes that doesn't happen, depending on the complexity and the size of the project, the timing of the bidding, the materials. Some have quite a long, extensive lead time. Some materials will see mechanical, especially air conditioning components are taking, in some cases on the larger structures, almost a year or more to get some of those. That's what we're contending with right now.
Currently about 16 months on some of the air conditioning.
Yes, we're still waiting on air conditioning units for projects that happened and built last summer.
Still getting out.
Does everything on this list have to be approved together? Or can it be approved separately? Like some of
No,
those
we can break the
projects-
projects out separate. We would based on schools, first of all, and then we could, depending on priorities, like Kevin had mentioned. If if you want us to work, and might be also schedule related. If we know we can get projects in sooner, depending on when your vote is, and we're targeting a summer for most of these projects, with exception of the addition will be done concurrently throughout the entire year. But some of the projects are weather and time sensitive based on sports activities for some of the athletic fields and things of that nature. So when we sit and really go through the phasing, scheduling the project, timing of your vote, all that factors in on when the projects really can start to happen.
I'd also remind you, for the primary courtyards this time, we had to go out to vote, we had to go out to bid 3 times on it, because not that we did anything, but the contractors bid wrong.
Yeah, messed up the bid,
And, twice.
and we had to
So-
throw the bids out, unfortunately,
Right.
based on council.
And as we talk
recommendations.
about air conditioning, because obviously this is a big concern for everybody in the community, and Dr. Sinha mentioned the 3 multi-purpose rooms that we're in the design phase or working on, we could probably get started end of this, like where
The anticipation that multi-purpose rooms would be
for the 3
done for
primaries.
the 3 primaries next summer. So during that summer, those would be installed. So the following fall, you come back. you have
They're in and working
Correct.
because we started on this last year. I just want to put that in
Yes. Yeah.
context again.
Correct.
We try to target the day after school ends for those kind of projects to start, because the multipurpose rooms would be used up until the last day of school. So that's what we tend to do.
Right. And the presentation today is on anything other air conditioned that we haven't done yet, right? This is what we're looking at here for the primaries,
Those would be your classroom spaces.
classroom spaces, right? So, okay,
And just so everybody's aware, the primary schools, they have these sliding windows so that, window units are not an option for the primary schools because of the window situation. So we're talking about the split systems. So even as a temporary patchwork, there is no temporary way to with sliding windows to put in air conditioning units for folks. Because I know people have sent in emails or inquired. So I don't know if you want to add anything.
It has, I mean, we haven't seen this type of weather. It was a brutal start to the school year, no doubt. Air conditioning, we have been putting in little by little. We've done quite a bit in the last couple of years. And with our primary schools, that was something, we wanted to do the large spaces. So kids would have a space to go to, and our teachers as well. And, in the other schools, it was different because the windows are situated different, and we were able, especially with the electricity, we were able to do those with not all of them, but with the window units. Our goal is to have our buildings, all of them, to be air conditioned, and really look at even a long-term plan besides just the window units, something that would, last even longer.
And
than
one,
that.
one of the things just to mention that included in these costs are additional electrical improvements. When you put in the extensive amount of electricity or air conditioning units in these spaces, you may need to increase your electrical load capacities and your switchgear and things of that nature. So we have funds in here if those are necessary to be able to do things like that.
And there's also
Mhm.
regulatory issues around fresh air for
Correct.
air
Your-
conditioning
your
rooms. So
equipment
it's
is
not.
required to be interlocked to your fresh air. So when you put an air conditioner in a window, the state wants you to tie in your fresh air through your UVs, or if you're putting a split unit, et cetera. So
So Gary, just so the board understands this, air conditioning on all 3 primaries, all classrooms, we're looking at 3.6 million, inclusive of any electrical upgrades needed, anything to deliver that. And it would be rooftop units. It would be diffusers in the classroom. There's nothing outside, hanging outside of the primaries.
there would be condensers up on the roof, and there'd be split units, cassette units or wall mounted units, depending on the space inside of the classrooms.
Okay,
So some would be sitting right into the ceilings of the classrooms.
okay. And all tied into our building management system, just to make sure between the fresh air unit
Correct.
ventilators, everything is
Yes.
working properly. Okay. And then the other air conditionings that we see here are cafeteria, large spaces, gymnasium, cafeterias, middle school, And then Stewart and Stratford cafeterias, again, large spaces, each of them about $500,000 each to do.
That's correct. Some will be done through a rooftop unit, that's a ducted unit, or some will be split units depending on the spaces. In some of the buildings, we don't have access to, have ceilings with access for ductwork, so those would be handled.
Depending on age of building and other
Correct.
structural factors. Got it. Okay. Just a question on the outdoor fitness center, restroom concession stands, right? So I heard no access, so that's not a security issue. If schools are closed, access to those facilities has no entrance or no way to get into our buildings outside of the band of school hours type of thing?
Correct. You'd have a ability to lock those doors either internally, externally. Obviously, you'd have panics for exiting through
Similar
the
to our
space,
building, current.
just like, yes, your current setups,
Okay, so,
but controllable.
okay. But Saturday game, people will have access to it. Community members who are there and,
Correct. You just need to, we can figure out how you control the locking. That's either staff unlocking or other means we could work that out. But yes, and then the building itself will be locked off. You can't directly enter the rest of the building from the addition. We'll be able to control that access point.
okay. And total number of restrooms again, just for those
There
on
was,
the public side here?
In each of the gang toilets, 3 facilities with water closets, urinals, and then 3 sinks, and then 2 additional single-use gender-neutral toilets
So total of 8 it would be. Right.
on the
First floor.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for now.
And maybe just one other question, a little bit off topic, but staying on the air conditioning. If we were to air condition all the schools with these split units or whatever's available, I know it's a rough estimate, but what was that number again?
It's about $15 to $17 million.
And is that on top of the numbers laid out here,
Or,
or would that be inclusive of some of this here?
inclusive of some. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? On the board side? I think, yeah, it's open. You can come up to the mic and, and ask your question. At this time, yes.
I'm sorry, it's very stupid, but why do you have an even number of men and women's bathrooms? Can we have more women's and less men?
Well, there are certain code requirements we follow, but you can have as many as you want, but there is
It's like
a
everywhere you go,
proportion.
it's like we all know that we're gonna get there and be like, this is stupid. Why do we have so many more men than women? Right, so maybe we could just do that now.
We can certainly talk to the district about
Okay,
that.
well, that would be my suggestion. Especially like if it's gonna be used for a lot of people at an event. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Evening.
First of all, I'm super excited when I heard about the Bloomberg terminal because having worked at Bloomberg before, I know how valuable it is for people, world leaders use it, like corporations and government agencies. So I'm very excited about that. And I know it's also very, very pricey. I also have my Bloomberg terminal here, so I cannot live without it. But anyways, I want to go to the main worry for parents in Garden City. Dr. Senia, you probably are the most popular person right now in this room and the most demanded in the past few days because you probably were bombarded by emails about parents complaining about the hot conditions in the room, having a 6-year-old who came home Tuesday and Wednesday, very tired, exhausted, with headaches and lethargic. How was your first day? Mommy, I have never been that hot in my life. And begging me not to go back to school on Thursday because he said it's too hot and the fan that we have in the room blows hot air. That's very dangerous. If outside the temperatures were reaching 100 degrees, inside those rooms, the temperature was even higher. There was no air circulating. So it's very worrisome. And from what I hear from you, and as a journalist having covered these topics, there is not really like a set date that you have established to install the AC units. And it seems that the primaries won't get them soon because first you have the sliding windows, which seem to be a problem. And you mentioned that depending on the urgency of the plan, it can take 6 weeks to a few months or maybe up to 18 months to tackle the problem and to install the air conditioners. What is the plan? Is this an urgent plan? I know it's ongoing. It's part of a long-term plan. The principal said Mother Nature is not cooperating with us, but we know that global warming is here to stay. This was the hottest summer on record. Last year, we were talking exactly about the same topic, and the year before, it was the same. And I'm very sure that all of you here, especially the gentlemen wearing their nice suits, were in air-conditioned rooms last week, this week, and every day. Because imagine if you show up to your work in a 100-degree room, would you perform? You go complain to HR. But these are small children who they have to abide by the rules, they listen to the teacher, and they put in their best behavior and follow the adults. It's just a matter of time before a kid collapses, dies from the heat, because experts actually have said that small children are more prone to suffer heat stroke, heat exhaustion. And it's not fair for the students to be learning in a heated room and for teachers to be teaching in a hot room. How do you expect the high school students to work on the Bloomberg terminal if it's very hot in the room?
So
I mean,
we've
what
asked,
is the plan? Is it urgent? I mean, my older son is at Stratford and the gymnasium doesn't even have air conditioning. Can you imagine all the kids jogging? And even in the winter, it's very hot in there because I have been in the school. It's very hot. The air circulation is bad. So when can we expect this plan, ambitious plan, to be in place? What is the goal? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? If you say this is when we expect it to be completed.
so I'll try to answer with as much information as I can. As we laid out, the process from the state dictates a lot of these capital plans. So we can't put window units in, so that's not an option. The other option is to work on these capital plans as we've discussed. That's not 100% in our control. The voters need time to vote on it. It needs to go through a normal budgetary process. Then the state has to approve it. So an urgent plan, unfortunately for us, with window units not being an option, is whatever the state allows us based on our budget after our budget vote, assuming it gets approved. So unfortunately, you're looking at probably 18 months in a best case scenario, I would think. The alternative, and I've asked this question too, and then I'll let Dr. Sinha talk because I've asked these questions. If there are days where it's really hot, we can effectively use something like a snow day and cancel school. But I would remind everybody there's not a lot of them. And if you do that, it could impact vacations and other daily schedules. We are required to have a certain number of school days a year. So if we cancel the week of school because of heat, then you're probably looking at losing one of your either your spring or fall, spring or winter breaks. So you have to balance. It's not simple just because of the regulatory and state requirements. So I appreciate your sense of urgency, but some of this is kind of a little bit out of our hands in terms of process, unless we want to start canceling school and canceling or switching calendar days.
We actually lobbied at Capitol Hill for this about school districts getting federal funding to do these projects because of the temperatures. Temperatures are not the same as it was several years ago. For us, for the primary schools, what is that the multi-purpose rooms will have AC. But again, there's a process. We have to follow and get these approval, what Mr. Cilio was saying. So we have every year we've added and added, these AC units. But for the primary schools, the multipurpose room will hopefully be done this year. It'll be actually over the summer, really, because you can't do projects when the kids are also in school, especially interior, because you're not going to have contractors in the buildings with kids here.
Dr. Sinner, can you tell us, what is the percentage of actual air conditioned throughout the district that we have done?
We've done quite a bit. And again, outside of the primaries with the elementary, middle and the high school, we're anywhere between 70 to 75%. We do have window units that we put in. And particularly with our, even in the primary with our special ed classes, they have air conditioning in those classrooms.
So it's predominantly second floor because that's the hottest? that we start?
Second floor, we started that several years ago. It's here, we started first at the high school with the second floor, and then with the federal funds that we had received, the ARPA funds, we actually allocated all of that for, a majority of it for the air conditioning in our
So
district.
We have stayed active and we have been doing it as much as possible through our limitations. So
What
just wanna-
about Stratford, like they don't have sliding windows? Is there an option to install them on the first?
We
floor?
are, that's our next, we finished, I think we finished the second floor and we have done some on the first floor. Our goal is to put more in actually at the both elementaries and middle and the high school.
And last question, you said snow days are not an option for you in summer because then you really don't have much days later or school will have to finish later, but you realize that majority of school districts like in Connecticut, New Jersey, they shortened the days. They had early dismissal or they even had remote learning. Now with the technology that is available, I mean, shouldn't that be better that you have 23 kids in each classroom that are suffocating from the heat and actually are not learning at all? Like be more effective and cover everything in half a day and dismiss them earlier, at least for the kids that don't have air conditioning in their classrooms, because then you're less liable. Imagine something happens to a kid in a classroom that is heated, you would be held liable. So much of them is on medication, right? There are kids that are on medication, asthma, you know. Specifically for kids with asthma and breathing respiratory issues with allergies, where opening window is not an option in fall or in spring. What is your recommendation? Wait 2 years and then come to school? Like at this timeline, like if you can't go to school, we have like episodes when you go to emergency room after school because he's on 3 different inhalers and 20 different medicines. And so we are sitting in school with open windows, inhaling all the pollen that he's allergic to, or shut the window and boil it. What is the option? Move to another district?
Well, I would say not every district has air conditioning. And I appreciate your frustration, but it's not like I can snap my fingers and make it happen. As you heard, there are regulatory and state guidelines.
Hurt or heal and people like.
But that won't change the timeline. So I understand your issue. If you're debating whether we should put it in the budget and ask for air conditioning for everywhere, that doesn't change the timeline that you're suggesting. We can certainly, try to accommodate or address some of that, but that does not change the timeline.
What is the timeline to have air conditioning in primary schools? Because it's not just the children, there are elderly people there. There are people who do physical labor, like janitors. I can't see how can they perform their job if they're sitting over there inhaling pneumonia or something all day in 100 degrees heat.
I mean, with the primaries, like I said, the multipurpose rooms, those large spaces will be done this summer.
You can come up to the mic if you'd like. That way, everybody, there's people who are listening online. If you want to come up to the mic and speak, it's all right. Go ahead. You could talk from there. We can repeat the question if you'd like.
Respectfully, we pay very high taxes. I know other districts don't pay the taxes that we pay. They have air conditioning. They have old buildings. Our administration office, they all have air conditioning.
How do they not feel guilty when our kids are roasting and they're sitting in an air-conditioned room every day? And to our point, there are kids on medication. There are kids that have asthma. We have to think outside the box. Like, we're restoring a library. Is that really that important? I've done a lot of volunteer for Stratford's library. It was fine. Yeah, eventually it could be updated aesthetically, but is that really important right now? Like, how do you determine which teacher gets the air conditioner? That's what I would like to know. And the teacher that doesn't. Is it a pecking order who's been there a long time? Because the new teacher that my daughter has doesn't have an air conditioning, but last year she did. I thought all of Stratford had an air conditioner, but unfortunately this year I found out they don't.
I mean, there's definitely no pecking order. Like I said earlier, we prioritize the second floor, installing AC units in our elementary, middle, and high school. And now we're at the first floor. We have done several classrooms. We have more to do for all of those buildings. And we are prioritizing, making sure every year we have added those units within the, again, it's the units plus it's the electrical work that goes hand in hand.
I understand, but the administration office is also an old building. How come they all are sitting in a nice, cool office and our kids, we're paying the tax dollar and we have to wait for the air conditioning for another 2 years? Almost 2 years. That's not fair.
I would just say, I appreciate your frustration. I've asked this question. We can't divert funds from existing projects to this project, even if we wanted to. So it's not,
Well, we
it's
could
not a matter of will.
prioritize, right? What's important, which is
I-
the well-being and
I
the health
can't-
for our children
So we can
to the
cancel school.
aesthetics.
But I can't take money from other projects, and anybody here is not allowed to take money from projects that are in place and approved by the state and divert them to that. So that's not a me issue. That's not anybody else's issue up here. It's the state's issue. So if we want to do that, I think the only other option, and feel free to kind of send emails and express this, is to adjust the school
We have-
days.
We have, my last question is, then how do the other school districts on Long Island that don't pay the taxes that we do are able to have air conditioning in the rooms? How are they able to do it? And we're paying these high taxes and we have to keep on waiting. I feel like we're being pacified by words, but it's never happening.
That's not. the
No,
case. We don't know what funding other school districts get.
There's other, I mean, I'm not an expert on it.
We used to
Mr.
live in
Capito.
Massapequa. Massapequa, I know, I mean, the taxes are not cheap, but they're not as high as here. And they have a lot more and they have air conditioning.
You know, the
We
one
lived
thing.
there for a few years.
The one thing I can tell you is, you know, we have already started, even with the units that we have purchased more units for all of our, again, the first floor. And they will be installed throughout the year. You know, and again, that work, I mean, Mr. Foley is here. You know, we have started that already. We've done it it's been ongoing, but we'll be putting in more units in all of these buildings. The thing that I worry about is just the electrical piece, but we will be installing more, just like what we have done in the second floor. What we said we would do, we have been doing it.
How about fans, like a temporary solution? I mean, I know there's one fan, but the class is so large that it really doesn't do anything. You know, like a big steel fan that you see in the banks, just temporarily until we fix this problem. So there's an airflow and there's some sort of air. They have literally a small little fan that is hanging on a ceiling and the room is like almost 1,000 square feet. That's not going to do anything. I personally even volunteered to pay for fans and the teacher mentioned that's not allowed. So I mean, I don't know. That's just the solution until we address this issue, serious issue.
We can look into those larger fans for sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Foley, do we know how many air conditioners we have sitting on the sideline that would need to get installed? Do we have a number? And are we working on those maybe during breaks? Any input from that? Does anyone know?
Right after the heat wave, or during that heat wave, we started installing what we have, replacing the ones that were broken with what we have with our reserves. And we have just ordered 40 more air conditioners. So they're en route, or hopefully they'll be here this week.
and we have the crews working on Saturdays and some of them after school to try to get to the first floor. So we have enough now to be able to finish the first floor in those, the three schools, those 12, schools of God. Okay, and it's not an option in the primaries because of the way the windows are constructed from the older buildings. Am I correct? You can't cut out the windows. There's no, right, got it. Security also. Because some of the security is compromised when you have to those sliding glass windows with the. Push it out, intruder comes right in. Right, it's
Exactly.
right.
The other windows that we have, we can screw shut and screw them in. We have.
Can't be removed. Right, got it. Thank you.
A window and have a partition built above it as a temporary solution. I don't see why that can be done.
There might be other logistics that I'll divert to our director of facilities that we can or can't do. So, you know, if you have any other questions, we can certainly look into that, but
My son actually was in one of those classrooms last year for kindergarten. If you were able to install 2 AC units into windows at Homestead, why can you not install them in the other class? Why cannot you do the same thing you did for those 2 classes?
Actually, this office in Homestead has window unit installed at the top window above the big window. It's kind of like a cutout. It's just slightly bigger than the regular window unit. I can't see anyone scaling walls to climb up to get into the building for that. That would seem that like the easiest and cheapest solution. To be a temporary solution to filter and clean some air until the sunshine is being installed.
yeah, I think part of the problem is being able to get all units, even if you wanted to go that route, you still need SED approval. Am I right to do anything modifications to the school?
Who's approval?
State ed approval before any projects can be, yeah.
And how we go around getting that approval? People are willing, I mean, parents are willing to pay for those units to be installed. How we get the approval?
Unfortunately, you cannot. You have to go through state ed and they have to approve any projects.
Can we ask for that?
Well, it wouldn't work that way.
So money is not an issue here, it's just the approval.
Approvals are a big part of the issue. I think that's, I mean, I defer to others, but that's the big challenge. It's not a lack of will to the people up here. It's just that it's not, even if we had the funds and we had the air conditioners and some of the stuff, it's a challenge.
Get all the approval all at the same time to do whatever.
They don't work that way.
They're
I mean,
used, they're
that's
used,
what I was trying to lay out earlier. Why do they do it? I don't know. I don't agree with the process. I don't control it, unfortunately.
Don't we have $5 million in reserves right now?
You still would need voter approval to expend those funds for that. You would still need voter
Work with
approval.
you and help you accelerate the process.
that's,
I mean,
We
we're
can't-
ready if we have to jump and get into a big truck and go together with you to the State Department, wherever, I mean, wherever we have to go. I mean, seriously.
we wish Albany would work that way. It doesn't work that way.
Yes, the state ed, state, Albany is. I know there's another question. We'll come back to you. We'll put our heads together after this and see if there's anything else we can do. But all the questions you've asked, everybody up here has asked probably multiple times in the last week. And it's just unfortunately part of being an education institution, highly regulated, and the state controlling everything we do on our buildings. I know it's not a palatable answer, but it's not something that we can control, unfortunately.
That's okay. No, I get it. Hi, Donna Kraus, 83 Brook Street, and I am president of the Garden City PTA. And I'll just do a little plug. We have a legislative committee that works on all that type of stuff, and we need representatives for each building who actually work with state senators and lobby and all of that. So if you're really serious, go onto your school's website, get your voice out there, join the legislative committee, and I mean, we got voting out of the school, we got stop signs on buses, like talk to your. Well, all right, let's get into the school first and then we'll talk. But for all those, so I have, most of my kids are in high school now, and I appreciate all of your frustration on all of these issues. And I would just encourage you to be open. And once you learn how a school works, that it's not a private school, we just can't say, hey, board, we would like this and we'll all pay for it. Unfortunately, it's counterintuitive to how we think things should work, and it just takes a lot of time. But I am so thrilled, and I want to say thank you, finally, for the turf project. This has been on our agenda in every meeting with the central administration that I've sat on for the last 5 years. And when your kids are little and not in the high school yet, you may not think this is a huge deal, but it's not just about sports. First and foremost, it's about safety. That field has been in the worst condition forever. I have one child that was injured on that field, not playing, just because of the condition of the field, and it very negatively impacted his recruitment and path to college. Not to mention the goose droppings, which is a whole other issue that this will solve. But it is not just about the sports team. We have world-class sports programs, and Mr. Ramirez has taken it to the next level, and this facility will only help us grow even more. But it's not just the sport kids that benefit, it's our band. Our award-winning band practices in the dark on the field after all the other sports are done, because there's just not enough field space. So this will help with that. Our Silks drill team that work with the band, they practice in the little patch of grass by the other bus circle. So this is a huge improvement that they'll all benefit for, just for the field space. I do have a couple of questions though on it. From the pictures there, is it a merged field where it looks like the softball and baseball fields kind of overlap, or is that just graphics? Because it looks like we actually lose some space from the building. And I just wonder how, like spring sports, when you've got baseball and girls and boys lacrosse, it won't be affected. That's just the graphics.
There's.
No,
It's
there'll-
just the graphics.
There'll be no
how the
impact.
graphics from
Yeah,
that.
there'll be no impact.
Okay.
to that.
That's baseball.
So they'd still all be able to play at the same time. Excellent. And then of course, I've got to ask, will those fields, at least maybe not done in this piece, but will they at least have the groundwork for sound system, scoreboards, and lighting?
I would say it's something that's been discussed. I think that would probably, it's not finalized yet, but there's obviously considerations to the local community that we have to think about, and also the cost to, if we put everything that we're talking about between air conditioning, all this stuff, we're talking
Well, maybe phase two.
35, $36 million, that would raise your taxes. So we've been targeting things that we think are most impactful. I think that would be maybe a phase two, depending upon, how this initial phase goes. That's something I've asked, whether it could be there or even trying to do improvements at the middle school. I know that field's also not great, but that would be,
Phase two.
obviously high school is more important than the middle school, at least as it relates to some of the field considerations. So we've had those discussions, but I think this is the most effective plan that's cost neutral for now and gets us not where we want to be, but we can't do it all at once. So.
Okay, great.
Donna, keep in mind, we've been looking at this since last year. We met
yeah.
throughout the summer. We've been discussing with them at least 6 times. So we didn't come up with this in a week.
Oh, I know.
This
I
has
know.
been going on.
Years.
Yeah.
Years. No, but thank you so much. I'm excited. I wish I could, wish my kids were younger now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joe, can I just say something?
Sure.
Just to get back to the air conditioning, we all have, well, almost all of us have kids in the schools. My kids are older now, but they've been through Hemlock. I'm not trying to sound callous because I'll make a better point, but if if last week was 60 degrees, we wouldn't be here. And in a month, other than us, probably not a lot of people will remember this topic. But we talked about it earlier that we're not going to do that. Like, it's not going to be forgotten about. I can't promise you I'll have something in by the spring, but you'll have some kind of plan of when we can do this. Whether it's my fear of putting window air conditioning units in was, are we going to dispose of them in a year and put wall units in? So we'll look at the price of that. Maybe that's something, the safety issue, you know, I'm not so concerned. There are some concerns, but there are other concerns. But I think we owe it to you that in a month from now, when it's 55 degrees, we're still working on this, and we need to communicate to you what we're going to do. And
Yeah.
again, I can't promise you that it's going to be exactly what you want to do, but unlike before, there'll be some kind of timeline
And I mean,
in a month from now. I don't think we'll be talking about this, but listen, I'm not a climate change denier. I just think in a month from now, we'll be out of this.
and I mean, well,
Correct. I'm not going to forget about this. You're not going to. Oh, I know. I'm just saying in a month. I didn't say in the spring. I'm saying in the month. I'd like to have some kind of, we're going to continue to work on this is my point. That this isn't something we talked about earlier that we're going to forget, you know, because people stop talking about it. I think it's something we need to come up, Joe, with his timeline, some numbers, whether it's the temporary units in the spring. But again, that was my fear that we put those in and now a year from now, we're going to use something else there. But if the numbers bear better, maybe that's the solution.
Pull it out and get it today, so works in the air conditioner, but it's not permanent installment in the window. You can lock the window after you're done. At the end of the day, that'd be allowed. If each of us buys one for the classroom, they're not.
You're not.
They're not great.
It's,
The portable robot units, no.
it's not gonna, listen, I believe me, I understand the frustration, like trustee O'Donohue said, we have children in the school, I get it. I went through it in Stratford, it was awful. One of my children has an asthmatic condition, I mean, it's almost paralyzing. I went through the, you know, my wife and I, we went through those trips to the emergency room, I get it. But, you know, that being said, we're not blaming up, but Albany actually had a situation where something, the administration shared that something could be fast tracked and taken care of in 6 weeks to 2 months, and they did away with it because that's Albany. The question about the window units, believe me, again, I understand it, but you know, I mean, I'm in the city, so you'll drive by different, you know, different schools in the city and you see the units. These aren't units that are, you know, 10 or 12,000 BTUs, something that you would have in your, you know, in your living room or in your bedroom or something. They're 24, in some cases, 36,000 BTUs. You need a separate electrical line. And that's really was one of the major concerns of, you know, when we do have this install, we were talking with the architects before, and just the electric alone, gentlemen, million, close to $1 million. Is that correct? Like, no, I think we heard 900,000. I mean, that's for all intents and purposes, it's something that we don't reap the benefits of immediately. And saying I can flip on the air conditioner, but we need that $900,000 in order to make the electric work. Right.
If I may say to trustee Janeko's point and Mrs. Krause's point, I think the biggest thing that was a loss was when we had the expediters and things were getting approved like this. I think your biggest impact would be if you contact your legislators and say, how do we get the expediters back?
No, it's not. November's coming. That's why it's the perfect time.
And we did ask that question. So I would request, and I did ask this question as well, that for kids with conditions, if there is a specific issue that I know we're aware of everything, but there's thousands of kids in the district to alert people here, and we'll try to make accommodations if possible without impacting folks. I mean, this is not, there's 4,600 students, so there's a lot to take in. So
Can I just mention, Joe, I was actually being the opposite of callous. I was saying a lot of people will. Trust me, we should not forget this issue, as you won't. But some people, that's what I meant. I was actually set up, it's going to sound callous, but I'm completely in the opposite direction. I'm with you.
we're in the process of long-term planning, and unfortunately it is long-term. And so that's kind of where. Well, that's what the split systems, yeah, they do. That's the requirement to make sure, yes, you're getting fresh air. You put window units in, you're not getting the same kind of quality air and all the rest of it. So that's why the split systems are really the way to go. And unfortunately, that's why it takes longer, but it is the right solution for your child's issue, specifically.
And actually, the split units, they will come equipped with a heat pump as well, just as more peace of mind, just in case. Because as we've said, old buildings, what you always worry about the furnace. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. You can actually flip a switch, and if need be, I know we're sitting humidity awful right now, but come December, if something, heaven forbid, was to happen, we'd be able to use that as heat as well. So it really will help in that sense to give us both if needed.
Hi, Erica.
Yeah, can you say your name? Sorry.
Yes,
everybody.
Erica Balkema. I live at
Thanks.
196 Brixton Road. First, I wanted to say thank you. I've never been to one of these meetings and they are very informative. You will be seeing me here again. I do appreciate, all of this information. Obviously, I've seen and been a part of the air conditioning situation. I have a child at Homestead. But I have a question. So this capital improvement plan, is this all or none? If the vote is no, nothing gets done?
This has just been our initial presentation to the community and the board.
Mhm.
So it depends on, you could have different propositions in a bond as well.
Right. So if it goes out,
Yeah, this one, yes. The way we plan for this is one proposition. So the air conditioning is part of that
Right.
proposition. But you can always have, more than one proposition.
right, so then there would be, and so these are projections.
These are all, they're all preliminary estimates, I would say.
Right. I mean, because I've built 2 houses actually during COVID, and I understand that projections and actual can be very different. On the past projects that have been done, how close were the projections to the actual, and what happens when it goes over?
I think we've used BBS for 17 years now, and I think they're pretty close with ad alternates, and we've been
That's right.
pretty much on budget or under budget, and this is why they're still with us.
Great. No, that's good to know, because historically it's good to know how close you've been estimating. Because I know you can go out to bid and get wildly different numbers.
And it has to be close to budget, because honestly, we're getting approval for a specific amount. So there is no additional funds sitting around to do more work. So if we're off wildly, it's a problem, obviously.
All of these numbers have contingencies and escalation built into them.
Got it.
Okay.
And the fees, like your fees are already built into these numbers?
All of it is
Everything.
in here. So this is project costs. This is everything,
Got it.
It's all.
including soft costs, legal, all that.
Got it. So if I know air conditioning obviously is a big issue. I have a 5-year-old who sits on a bus for 30 minutes and then, sits at Homestead, comes home, is overheated, et cetera. Again, in a month, this won't be as big of an issue, but I was in that school in early May of last year and it is sweltering. So, I mean, I look at this and I see a lot of really amazing things. I see a Bloomberg room. I mean, I do wonder a little bit, either now or eventually, is there a breakdown of the numbers? Some of the numbers just seem high to me, but again, I've never done commercial work, like, $400,000 for a Bloomberg room with no Bloombergs in it. Is there, or, $10 million for a new portion of a building? Listen, I think everything that improves our high school is amazing. But are the breakdown of those numbers publicly available at any point?
I think we can provide more detail as we get kind of further
It
along
will
in the
be.
planning
It would
process.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're in the presentation. They'll be up on the website. the breakdown.
Like the breakdown of like
Mhm.
what goes
Each
into
one.
the 9.7 million?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming. Look forward to seeing you.
Are there any other questions in the room? Well, it's a work session. I guess. I mean, we have a regular session next week. Normally we do, if there's other like school related questions that aren't on this topic, we normally hand them at the regular session for folks. That's kind of the typical cadence. So is there a specific topic that, because I don't want to kind of blend sessions normally because people like to attend certain things and they listen to certain things. So what topic is it? Is it? The safety plan.
Oh, the.
You can, yeah, you go ahead. That's.
Are you talking about the district safety plan, Ms.
Safety
Comfort?
wide plan? Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Eileen Comerford, Kildare Road. So I read the safety plan. I'm sorry, I wasn't really able to understand the parts that I wanted to know about, which was it felt to me like there was not going to be an armed person anywhere in any of the schools. And it felt like we were not adding any sort of like metal protectors or anything like that. I found it like very dense and difficult to read because a lot of it is not saying what we're really going to do because they really can't. So really, I had those two specific questions.
So the building level plans, those we don't make public. So we have the district level
Right.
plan and then the building level plan, they were approved. What we do have, Ms. Comerford, is our security or supervisory aides. And in all of our buildings, we increased that last year in our budget. And which means that they are all retired police officers and they've been actually very helpful. So they're in, in all of our buildings. Correct.
Yeah.
They
No.
do not. No.
No.
But what's, their keen eye, because they're retired police officers, that's been very helpful. Yeah.
We're not, no, we've decided to use the supervisory aides. We think that's sufficient at this time. I think we've discussed recently, given stuff that's obviously going on kind of in general in the county, just making sure that there's aides there as much as possible while students are there before and after school. There are always incidences going on, and we had Commissioner Jackson. We were speaking with him before we came out here publicly talking about the plans, and they coordinate very well with people in the room, people who aren't here. Obviously, there's been lockouts or lockdowns in the past. We get good coverage from them. Having the supervisory aides in the school, I think, provides that extra layer of security, and that was something the board has pushed for along with the administration in the last 12 months. So that's new, and we're going to continue to make sure that there's sufficient resources for that, just to make sure that if there is any issues that we have coverage at the buildings. Obviously, there's been instances in the past year, so it's something we're very focused on. Mr. O'Donoghue obviously has a police background, and he's kind of helped spearhead the efforts on that to think differently about how we've done it in the past. Both. There was an incident at the Stop and Shop near Cherry Valley. We did have help from the Garden City Police Department. There was somebody who was trying to evade being arrested. He did try to approach one of our schools. Our supervisory aide did interact with that individual, engage the cops, and the person was arrested. So that was a clear instance of, thankfully, having well-trained people both at the school and having supervisory aides there to make sure that somebody who could be dangerous does not gain entrance into our schools. It was after school hours, but there are kids on campus for scope. So that's something that was very successful. And then there have been bomb threats in the past, and they're being investigated. And there has been some resolution with some of that, and the police is handling that. So we're pleased with the work they're doing and the communication they have with the administration and the board.
You know, we do quite a bit of training internally as well for safety and the different, drills or we actually over the summer did tabletop exercises just so that we're prepared and the heightened level of safety that's everywhere in all of our schools. Yes.
Yes. And that's in conjunction with our police department. and at
It's
the
a
building level.
requirement. It's a requirement, the safety training.
No,
They're not, and if I could talk a little bit about that, I mean, there's a lot.
I asked that question.
Misnomers that go around, ballistic tape, things like that. It would be so air conditioning being expensive, it would be, but it really, in my experience, doesn't work. Same with the metal detectors. I can have an offline conversation with you about metal detectors, which, I'm not, I've had more confidence in the teachers identifying somebody who possibly had something than metal detectors at some point, but no, they're not.
And the incident that happened yesterday at one of our schools, it was because of the staff and the retired police officer supervisor aide that brought the person to a quick arrest. So I will say our building plans really work with the training we have given them.
thank you. Announcements. The next regular session will take place next Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 at 8:15 PM here at the Garden City High School. May I have a motion that the Board of Education adjourns to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you so much for making it,
Thank you for that comment. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.